Sorry, I was just talking, didn't even start the video. Alright, we're back on. Hello. We're back on slide 39, if I can get this to sit here with being charged. Back on slide 39, the peritoneum. It says it's a large, moist, slippery sheet of serous membrane that lines the abdominal cavity and covers the organs. It's just like when we talked about the pleura in the respiratory, in your thoracic cavity. A sheet of slippery, moist stuff that, let me connect myself back to my internet. I'm trying to use my hotspot. Anyway, in my thoracic cavity, that would be parietal and visceral pleura, and this it'll be parietal and visceral peritoneum. All right, so same sort of stuff, does the same thing, except for now it's called peritoneum. Okay. It does talk about the organs outside of the parietal peritoneum, such as the kidneys, are said to be retroperitoneal. So everything that is touching, that is protected by the visceral peritoneum, is things like your stomach, your intestines, things of that matter. All right, but your kidneys sit in front of that, so they're considered retroperitoneal. Or actually, they sit behind it, I should say. Okay, they sit behind it. So they are retroperitoneal. They sit on the outside. Extensions of the peritoneum. The two most prominent extensions of the peritoneum are the mesentery and the greater omentum. The mesentery is an extension between the parietal and visceral layers of the peritoneum. It is shaped like a giant pleated fan. Its smaller edge attaches to the lumbar region of the posterior abdominal wall, and its long, loose outer edge encloses most of the small intestine, anchoring it to the posterior abdominal wall. And that is so things just don't fly out. Why did I come unplugged? Why am I not charging? I hope I'm charging. All right, so I did see a picture, I thought, of this for you. Oh, yes. Back on figure 16.4, where we looked at the colon, you'll see some material that's attached to the side of the colon called the mesentery, and that's what we're talking about. Okay, that mesentery connects to the side of the colon and also out to the back of the abdominal cavity. So there's some kind of stability, so that your appendix, or excuse me, so that your colon is just not whipping in and out. Okay, we don't want it to get kinked or anything like that, because that can cause a medical emergency. So this helps it keep from moving all over the place inside the abdominal wall. It also talks about the greater omentum. The greater omentum is a pouch-like extension of the visceral peritoneum from the lower edge of the stomach, part of the duodenum, and the transverse colon. Shaped like a large apron, it hangs down over the intestines, and because of the spotty deposits of fat, give it a lacy appearance. It has been nicknamed the lace apron. It usually envelops a badly inflamed appendix, walling the appendix off from the rest of the abdominal organs. Don't really have to know much about that. All right, really just know the visceral and the parietal layers of the peritoneum. Okay, so we've got parietal peritoneum that lie against the parietal cavity, the visceral peritoneum, which lie up against the visceral organs of the peritoneum, and definitely know about the mesentery that keeps things in place, keeps your intestines from rolling around too much. We have the next slide actually talks about the mesentery and the greater omentum, and we talk about x-ray studies of the GI tract, which we're not going to talk about. We'll talk about all those things in med-surg, so you can leave out the x-ray studies. The next slide is a picture of the peritoneum. It looks a little confusing. You can see that actually, it is quite confusing to look at. If you can see, though, what lies outside of the peritoneum, and that's all the white, the yellow space. And the green spaces that you see are actually lying outside of that, and those are what's considered the retroperitoneal. If they lie outside of that yellow area, and they're not covered in that yellow area, then those areas are known to be retroperitoneal. And you can see quite a few of those, the pancreas, the duodenum, urinary bladder. Those things are all retroperitoneal, and you do need to know that term. Digestion. Digestion transforms foods into substances that can be absorbed and used by cells. Fuel, energy.